You walk into the boutique, and nobody looks up. Nobody looks up. And you thought that was rudeness. Yeah, it's not. The silence in a luxury store is not bad service. It's the most expensive thing in the room, and somebody paid for it on purpose. Think back. That door, heavier than it needed to be. No music. Nothing had a price on it. All that empty floor between you and the staff. You didn't last long. And somewhere on the pavement outside, you quietly decided something about yourself. Here's the part you couldn't have known standing out there. Prada paid more than $800 million for 2 buildings on Fifth Avenue. LVMH set its own property record that year, and the property firm Cushman & Wakefield will tell you exactly why, in writing. Brands buy instead of leasing because ownership lets them build the space exactly as they want. They're not renting a shop. They're buying the right to decide how the room makes you feel, which is a different product entirely. Okay, start outside. Just look at the building. In Tokyo, Miu Miu hired Herzog & de Meuron, one of the most decorated practices alive, to build its Aoyama store. And what did they build? A skin of opaque metal that conceals the products inside, because concealment was the brief. Miami? Same trick. The Dior facade is a stack of overlapping white panels, and the openings get narrower as the building rises. Now, rent on Upper Fifth Avenue runs around $2,000 a square foot. Been at that level for years. That's the most expensive shelf space on Earth. And the first thing these houses do with it? They cover the window. Every other retailer on that street buys glass, because glass is how a shop tells you what it sells. These houses bought metal. Take the glass away, and looking stops being possible. Entering becomes a decision you make in public, and the cheapest kind of interest disappears. That building has already sorted the street before anybody inside has judged a single person. Then there's the door itself. Get this, Louis Vuitton runs queue management software in its stores. Actual software. Its job? Cap how many people are inside at once, and let guests book a visit in advance, like a table. Outside, you get stanchions, a greeter holding a tablet, sometimes a security guard, and a wait that ends whenever an associate is free. Just sit with that for a second. A business paying the highest rent in the world bought software that keeps customers out of the shop it built. All of that costs money to install, to staff. All of it slows the queue outside. None of it is an accident, and none of it is cheap. So what's being protected in there, if it's plainly not sales? New chapter, new experiment. Take the boutique and put it on the scorecard every other shop on that street lives or dies by. And watch it fail. Retail analytics firms put in-store conversion at a luxury boutique at roughly 1% of the people who walk through the door. 1%. Nobody publishes it officially, so hold it loosely. But the shape? Not in dispute. Tiffany turns over many times more per square foot than a mass market chain, and still sells to almost nobody. So here's this shop, draws few people, sells to almost none of them, pays the highest rent in the world for the privilege, year after year. By any ordinary retail measure, that's a business in serious trouble. It's not in trouble. Look again. We're measuring it with the wrong instrument. The right instrument is advertising. And don't take my word for it. Michael Hirschfeld, property firm JLL, said it plainly. Creating that sense of exclusivity sometimes means strategically losing money. A flagship isn't judged on takings. It's judged on what it does to the brand. It's a marketing decision, wearing a shop's clothes. And once you see the store as a billboard you can walk inside, everything clicks. A billboard doesn't need a window. It's not a shop. It was never trying to show you goods. It doesn't need to convert anybody either. So the conversion rate stops being the test. That's why Bernard Arnault says LVMH tries to secure and buy the best possible locations for its companies. Why Kering dropped more than €1 billion on a single Milan property that year. Ownership buys what a lease can't. The unfettered ability, as Cushman and Wakefield puts it, to build the space exactly as you want. Which leaves the part of the room that costs most and shows least. One published number explains why nobody walked over to you. Here's that number. Neiman Marcus sells luxury for a living, and it put this on the record. The number that explains the silence. 2 customers in every 100 produce about 40% of its sales. 9 in 10 of them come back the following year, and most are worth over $1 million. So do the sum with me. What does that ratio do to 1 hour of one salesperson's time? A known client? She's basically an annuity. The store knows she'll return, knows roughly what she'll spend. A stranger who just walked in? A lottery ticket with no price on it. And across the whole industry, the biggest spenders have grown from under 1/3 of the market to nearly half of it. That's the arithmetic every floor manager is optimizing against, whether or not anybody says it out loud. So follow one associate, 1 hour, that floor. Her standing and her income live inside her client book. That's what the store measures her on. Depending on which survey you believe, she earns somewhere between about $18 and $29 an hour, standing beside a handbag worth months of that. Walking over to you? Unpaid work. Nothing in her day rewards it. Nobody in that room decided to insult you. There was no decision at all, and honestly, that's the part that stings. You weren't judged and found wanting. You were an unallocated resource. And from the inside, an unallocated resource looks exactly like contempt aimed at you personally. The room gives you no other explanation, no cue to blame, no crowd. So you supply the only cause available, which is yourself. And there's one more door inside this one. Somewhere in that building sits a bag you cannot buy with money. In March of 2024, 2 shoppers took Hermes to federal court in California. Because here's the thing about a Birkin. You can't order one online. You won't see one on a shelf. And asking? Asking does not get you one. The complaint described a rule. It alleged that Hermes offers the bag only to customers who've already bought scarves, shoes, and jewelry, because that is how you qualify. Then comes the allegation, the one that makes the whole machine make sense. The complaint says associates earn commission on all of those other products, and none at all on the bag itself. Think about that. If it's right, the person deciding whether you're worthy is paid to keep deciding no. The refusal doesn't need a policy behind it. The incentive does the work. Oh, and Chanel? Something quieter, same effect. They will not sell you a handbag online. A judge threw the claims out the following year. The system wasn't found unlawful, just described in a public filing, and left standing. Which raises the question nobody in that case had to answer. What happens to everyone it turns away? Now, here's where the story turns. Retailers had heard this complaint for years. Their answer was to tell the staff to be friendlier. Then, in 2014, the Journal of Consumer Research published a paper by Ward and Dahl. The title literally asked whether the devil should sell Prada. And what they found is that shoppers rejected by a luxury salesperson come away liking the brand more, willing to pay more for it, not tolerating it, wanting it more. Rejection raises their standing in your eyes. It sharpens the urge to belong. And when the rejecter is a brand, belonging has a price. Now, the paper attached conditions, and they matter more than the headline ever did. The effect needs a shopper who ties the brand to the person she wants to be. It needs a salesperson who looks and sounds like the brand, otherwise the rejection carries no authority. And it needs the wound to be fresh. Read quickly? That's a license. Okay, the strongest arguments against all of this. They deserve a fair hearing. First, none of this is designed, and a quiet room is just restraint at a high price point. Except, restraint is free, and Herzog and de Meuron are not. Second objection, it's just triage. Everyone serves their best customers first. An airline boards first class first, and your group number tells you nothing about you. But a boutique publishes nothing at all. So the same triage lands on you as a private verdict. No appeal, no record. And that matters, because an unwritten rule cannot control which signal it runs on. Researchers interviewed 55 middle-class African-American shoppers in New York. 80% reported racial stigma. Nearly 6 in 10 had been taken for a shoplifter. In 2013, Oprah Winfrey walked into a Zurich boutique called Trois Pommes. She said an assistant refused to show her a crocodile handbag because it was too expensive. The manager called that a complete misunderstanding and denied it flatly. Both accounts are on the record. Neither can be checked. And that is exactly what an undocumented filter produces. The difficulty is the product, and the queue outside is made of volunteers. But you have to read the rest of the paper. The effect fails completely on customers the brand already has. Nothing left to prove. It reverses when the staff don't convincingly embody the brand. And then, the finding nobody quoted. 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, the same customers reported that their desire for the brand had significantly diminished. The wanting had gone. The memory of how they were treated had not. So the premium is real, and it lasts about a fortnight. A luxury customer takes years to make, which means the industry is collecting a spike that expires faster than a second visit, and paying for it with the only people who could ever have become buyers. Which is a strange way to run a business, no? The researchers were blunt about it. Rude treatment may lift a sale today, and it discourages new customers from coming back. Across luxury, new customer acquisition fell 5% in a year. The people who would have started? They're not starting. Which sets up the strangest thing in the accounts. 2 houses, same playbook, same 12 months, and only one survived it. Look at what the industry did with an expiring premium. It closed every other door. A luxury house will not discount. One markdown teaches every customer that waiting works. It won't open an outlet either. An outlet is just a second price with a longer drive. So what happens to the stock that doesn't sell? Burberry's annual report disclosed it had physically destroyed 28 million pounds of finished goods in 1 year. Tens of millions more went the same way. Oh, and there's a tax angle. Brands exporting to the United States recover almost all of the duty on goods destroyed under customs supervision. So burning stock is cheap. Burberry stopped after the disclosure and the anger that followed. So, volume capped, discounting forbidden. One lever remains, and the price list does all the work. Take the medium Chanel classic flap. Before the pandemic, under $6,000. 5 years later, nearly doubled, after a run of increases arriving several times a year. Same leather, same bag. Nothing about the bag had changed. Same playbook, same 12 months, opposite results. And the difference is not taste. Hermes owns its bottleneck. It makes more than half its objects itself. That's a constraint you can point at, and it eases only when the company decides to. People pay for a shortage they believe in. They will not keep paying for a number somebody chose to move, because at that point, it's not scarcity, it's a decision. Hermes finished that year with a recurring operating margin of 40%, best in the industry. Chanel, by trade estimates, revenue fell, operating profit dropped by about a third, and the volumes going out of its boutiques went with them. Then it cut its next increase to 3%. So the filter works, provided the scarcity behind it is real. Which leaves one question. What does a filter do when it runs out of people to filter? Count them. Bain does, every year, and the direction is not ambiguous. The aspirational buyer, spending modestly, dreaming upward, has been a shrinking share of this market for 15 years. And no, that's not a recession. Recessions change how much people spend, not how many people start. Margins across the industry have fallen back to where they sat before the last financial crisis. Operating leverage now runs backwards. 4 years ago, there were 400 million luxury consumers. Today, closer to 340 million. Every one of those missing people was somebody's future customer. The browser the filter removed was the buyer it needed in 10 years. There's a Gucci store on Melrose Place in Los Angeles that you cannot walk into. Not open to the public, entry by appointment only. And across the industry, mono-brand stores are quietly removing selling floor. So when the filter runs out of people to filter, it doesn't open the door. It narrows it further. Because the only customers left were never at risk of being turned away. Kering built that salon for clients holding more than $30 million in investable assets. Okay, here's the verdict. The cold store is not a mistake, and it's not simply cruelty. It's a machine that works, built by people who never read the clock on it. When it makes you feel small, it's not malfunctioning. It's working exactly as specified. It turns rejection into willingness to pay for a fortnight, and an aspiring customer into a former one for good. The market had far more people in it 4 years ago. New ones arrive more slowly every year. The browsers were never the cost of doing business. They were the business 10 years early. So look, the useful thing here is not outrage at a shop, it's a habit. The next time a business makes you feel something specific and expensive, don't waste your energy asking whether they meant it. Somebody chose that. Somebody always does. Unwelcome, hurried, lucky to be allowed in. Ask which line on their accounts that feeling is defending. Any business that makes you feel small is protecting a signal that only holds its value while most people are outside. If you want the next one pulled open the same way, subscribe.